Hey guys, Chris here. Tonight we have a story about a solo hiker and camper who goes to the Olympic National Park on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. And there she finds that the wilderness is so thick and unforgiving because it's temperate rainforest that she knows that she can just simply vanish if she's not careful. And it is also, of all the places in the Northwest, Olympic National Park is #1 prime Bigfoot habitat. That's next. Okay, you guys, I am in the cabin tonight and I am nice and cozy. The sun's going down way earlier, so we're going to be in the cabin a little bit more, but I'm still going to be getting out. And also, we have a beer tonight. It's called Surface Take, and that is from the Roscoe Brewing Company out of Roscoe, New York. And this beer is a 7.2 ABV. This is a 16 ounce, and it's a hazy IPA. I just like the name hazy IPA. Maybe it rhymes with lazy. I don't know. That's kind of fun though. And hopefully, oh, see, it's not shaken up like it was in my backpack like usual. I had to clean some pine needles out of here that were stuck inside there. Oh, look at that. It is almost like a blonde like apple juice or something. Ooh, I can smell it from here. That smells good. Wow. It's very citrusy. Love that. That must be the hazy part of it. Nice and cold. Oh yeah, very much. I can taste the IPA hoppiness to it. It's got a slight citric bitterness to it, but it's got a really nice finish to it. That is really kind of fun. And the bitterness doesn't last very long. So yeah, that's great. Surface Take. It's got a brown trout on that. I love that. I'm into fly fishing. It also has a royal wolf. That's what they call that right there. I believe that's a royal wolf. So there you go. Surface Take. Cheers. So this story takes place in 2002, and the Olympic Peninsula is a very unique place. It is really a large national park, almost 1 million square acres, 922,000 acres. And then around that is the Olympic National Forest, and this national park consists of about 70 miles of rugged Washington coastline coming down the west side, and then rainforests on the wet west side, including the Hoh Rainforest, one of the last temperate rainforests in the United States. And then it goes up to this high alpine country, Hurricane Ridge, Mount Olympus, and then the drier west side. And this rainforest gets up to 120 to 140 inches of rain a year. And to contrast that, northern Nevada, where I live, gets about 7 inches, which is about this much, about the size of a large beer mug. And so if you were to stack like 17, 18 beer mugs, that's how much rain they get. About 12 to 14 feet of rain a year. Just crazy. And what that does is it creates all these ferns and mosses and this thick underbrush and these massive trees, red cedar, Sitka spruce trees, just these amazing large trees and these forests that are so thick you almost need like a machete to cut through them. Unless you're on a hiking trail or a game trail, it's almost impossible just to hike off into the forest. And this is where Anna in 2002 was living. She was living in Olympia, which is just south and east of Olympic National Park. And then to the east and north of there is Tacoma and Seattle and on up to Canada. And she had just got her degree in education from Evergreen State College. And she got a job in Olympia teaching fifth graders at a school there. She loved it. She loved the kids. She loved what she was doing. She came from Illinois. And it was such a contrast from where she had come and so different that she just loved it. She was a single person and she was really free to do whatever she wanted outside of her job. And so that summer, her first summer, the kids were going to be done for the year. And so she was going to go spend time up at the Olympic National Park for a couple of weeks. And her plan was to stay as long as she could, which is 2 weeks in a campground, and then come back home, refuel, clean up, get fresh food, and then head back out for a few more weeks and do this for a good part of the summer. She was really excited about that with the summer coming up. So she made her plans and she went out to the Olympic National Park and started touring and exploring, and she decided to stay at the Hoh River campground in the Hoh Rainforest. And there's a visitor center there and there's several trails, and she was really excited about this, having a great time. And she was on the sea loop in this campground for the first 2 weeks, and she would get up early and go exploring and meet other people on the trail, go to the visitor center, talk to the rangers and see all the exhibits, and then just being out in nature. She had grown up camping and being outdoors with her family, and so she was very comfortable in nature by herself. And she had friends that always worried about her, and she found out several of them liked horror movies, and she concluded that this contributed to them being fearful in nature and being by themselves and jumping to the worst conclusion and just having these very negative, scary thoughts when they're by themselves in nature, particularly at night. And she was a very positive person and always believed in the best and things just working out for the most part. And then one night, she's on this sea loop in the campground, this outer part of the park, the river's down below, and there's just a few other campers around her. And she hears, off in the distance, this faint howling sound. Really made her feel uncomfortable. She'd never felt like that before in nature. It was pretty far off, and whatever it was, it sounded pretty loud if you were to be close to it. Unfortunately, she was pretty far away, and it kind of echoed through the ridges and the valleys, and she just didn't know what to think of it. And other people in the campsites, in the campground, heard it as well, and a couple people came down the road since she was on this part of the campground and the thick forest was behind her, and that's where the sound was coming. And they asked her about it. She got up and met them at the little road, and they were discussing it. And they all kind of concluded it's got to be a mountain lion. And it's just because of the echoing and the distance, it just sounds really kind of strange. And she didn't know what else to think. Gets up the next morning, starting to get this routine where she starts walking around the campground, and then she has her breakfast and her coffee, and then she plans her day, and she puts her pack on and heads up one of the trails. There's the Hall of Mosses Trail, and I believe it's the Spruce Trail, and the Hoh River Trail follows near the Hoh River, goes to the visitor center. She's kind of got this routine where she gets out and she just enjoys her time. Comes back and she meets this couple that's next door to her, and they invite her over for dinner, and they had tacos that night, and she got to talk to them and got to meet them, and And they kind of, at least at first, felt sorry for her because she was single by herself. And she thought, I am very comfortable by myself and being in nature, and so I'm fine, but it's really nice when people try to help me out and stuff. And she got up the next morning, again doing her routine, she liked to do a walk around the campground before everyone else got up. And she looked down by this tree line that was kind of down this little hill, and it was a little bit of a clearing down there. It was misty and kind of foggy that morning, and she saw these two shapes. It looked like people standing down there, kind of moving around a little bit, and then they both turned and were like staring right at her. And she felt a little uncomfortable about this, and she just thought, well, they're just people. And then she looked back and to see if there was anyone else that was up, and she didn't see anybody. And she turns back, and whoever or whatever this was now gone. And then later that day, she talked to her neighbors, and she didn't bring it up, but they mentioned that they had seen a couple days earlier a couple of large figures in that same clearing along the tree line early in the morning. And she told them, I saw that just this morning, the same thing. A couple of looked like people down there. And the wife said, my husband went down there with the dog after the fog lifted, and he looked at this area, and they realized that whoever was down there, these two people, were much larger than they thought standing up in the campground road. And Anna thought that was odd as well. She didn't know what to think of that. She says, well, there's probably a couple of people down there. Anna goes back to her campsite, puts out her campfire, goes to bed. She wakes up, gets up as usual, puts her boots on, gets out of her tent, starts walking around the loop. And she notices, she gets to the end of her little campsite before she gets onto the road, and she looks over and she can see her neighbors that she just had dinner with a couple nights ago and just talked to the day before. They were breaking down their tent and looks like they were leaving. And she walked over and said, hey, good morning. What's going on? You guys leaving? I thought you were going to stay another week. And they said, we are leaving and we recommend you leave as well. And she said, well, what's going on? Are you guys okay? What happened? And they didn't want to say anything. And then the wife just said, something really strange happened to us last night, and we are going to leave. And she said, well, what happened? And they were really reluctant to say anything. And she kind of pressed him and asked a few different questions. And then the wife finally said, okay, so something was messing with our tent last night. And she said, what do you mean? What was messing with your tent? She said, I don't know. All we know is we were in our tent, it was late at night, and we woke up and we heard some strange sounds, some movement in the brush behind our tent. And the husband got up with a flashlight, unzipped the tent, went outside, and he's looking around in the forest, just a few feet outside the tent, but he's shining into the forest. And he doesn't see anything, and he doesn't hear anything. Whatever was making the sound had stopped. And he just went, okay. And he got down, he was going to unzip the tent, and he had the flashlight in his hand. And he shines the flashlight over towards this very large red cedar, and he sees in the beam of light this large upright figure standing there with this grayish whitish face just staring at him. It's dead quiet, and just for 3, maybe 4 seconds, it's standing there staring at him, and then it just quickly goes behind the tree and is gone. And right then, he just startles him, and he goes inside the tent, and he tells his wife what he saw. And for the next hour, something was moving around their tent and messing with their tent. And at that moment, they said, once the sun comes up, we're going to leave. And Anna didn't know what to say, and she just said, okay, well, I hope you guys are okay. And she was thinking that they probably misidentified something. Maybe they saw an elk. There's Roosevelt elk in Olympic National Park. And if you're like staring straight at an elk with a flashlight at night, and all you see is this body and the two legs and this face looking straight at you. Maybe that's what they saw, and she just thought maybe they're jumping to conclusions. She didn't know, and it wasn't her job to convince him otherwise. So she said, all right, well, it's really nice to meet you guys. And before she knew it, they were gone. And she felt kind of bad about it because it was the middle of the week and there was no one else in that part of the campground. And she thought, okay, well, they're gone and I'm kind of by myself now. And then she thought, being a positive person, well, this weekend there'll be some new people coming and we'll just go from there. It'd be nice to have some people around, but otherwise I'm going to go out and have a nice time. And so she got her pack on and she went up the trail and did her routine. And what she liked to do was go up this Hoh Rainforest, Hoh River trail. And she would go off the trail on this little game trail, and there was this little spot down below the trail that she liked to sit in and just almost meditate and just think about things. And she had some books on flora and fauna, flora and fauna. It's kind of funny to say that. It sounds like two old ladies, flora and fauna. But she had these books on trees and plants and animals, and she would read them and kind of learn about things. Anna just loved this spot. It was kind of her little space, and it wasn't too far off the trail, and she could just go there and kind of get away from people. And sometimes the trail would feel kind of busy. There was people going back and forth on the trail and going to the visitor center, and she really liked that. She liked to just have this space. And I'm kind of the same way. I really like that, just to kind of go out in the woods and just not have to be in the parking lot with everyone, and be on the trail with everyone, and be at the lake with everyone. I like to just kind of go off and just find my own thing. And that's what she was doing. She came back that afternoon. This was a few days later now. And she noticed there were some new neighbors. So she introduced herself and got to know them, and they visited. And again, they were just talking about having meals together. And just she told them about the park and what she had learned. And they had some experiences in the park before. And she was really excited to meet some new people. Anna got up early the next morning, did her walk around the campground. Everything was normal. Had her coffee, and then she thought about her day, and she decided to go back to this little secret spot that she had. It's not really a meadow. It's more like a clearing with ferns and mossy log in it. Just absolutely stunning backcountry in the Olympics. So she puts her pack on and goes up to this location, knows right where to drop in, hits the game trail, works her way down, and she's hanging out in the spot, just relaxing as normal, reading one of her books. And then she gets this really weird feeling, this kind of a bad feeling, like almost dangerous. Looks around, doesn't see anything, everything looks normal. And she can hear this very, very small stream flowing, and there's no wind, and it's just really pleasant, but something's off. And then she hears it. There's something down below in this very thick forest in front of her, down in this corner. It's very dark, and she hears movement in the brush. And then she hears this loud crashing sound coming towards her. And she's a good ways away. She's 20, 30 feet from this tree line, but she can hear something coming through the forest straight towards her. And then it stops, and she's listening to this and just kind of on red alert. And then she hears this deep guttural growl, this and it kind of reverberates in her chest. She can just feel it. And then it's dead quiet, and she doesn't hear any birds. She doesn't hear anything except the stream just trickling by. And she gets up, and she just almost in a panic turns and just runs up this game trail and gets to the top. And unfortunately, she figured it out and got to the main trail and took a right and went back down to camp. And she's back at camp. She's thinking about it, and she thought, oh my gosh, what was that? And it sounded like it was on 2 feet. So she didn't know what to think of it. She thought maybe a bear, but then it sounded like it was on 2 feet, and thinking a mountain lion, but that is 4 feet for sure. And she didn't know what to think, but she just felt good to be out of there. She didn't feel comfortable in that place anymore, in that space that she had. It was really odd. She decided to go to the visitor center and just be with people and hang out there for a while. And she came back, and the new neighbors were there, and she chatted with them, and they had tacos that night and enjoyed each other's company. And then she went back to her camp. She went to bed. And this is really odd. She wakes up in the middle of the night, and she had this dream. And in this dream, she's in the forest. She's by herself, and she's in a thick forest. And she's working on something. She's focused on something. She's got to get it done. It's like an urgency. She doesn't even know what it is. It's a dream, right? But there's this thing that she's just determined to get done. And every time she turns to focus on it, she hears something coming towards her in the forest. This is a dream. And she has to stop what she's doing. As soon as she turns to look, she doesn't see anything. And it's quiet. She works again, and she's focused and working. And then this, whatever it is coming towards her. And it's just really horrific, terrorizing feeling inside of her chest and her body. And this happens 3 times. And then all she remembers in this dream, she's running. And out of her peripheral vision, she sees these shapes moving on either side of her. A ways off in the brush, but between the brush, she can see these large shape shadows, is what she called them, running alongside of her. And when she looks straight at it, they're not there. She looks to her left, it's not there. And so it's just this really terrifying feeling. She just can't put her finger on it. Just something's trying to get to her, and yet she can't see it. And she wakes up again, and she's in this sweat, and she's thinking, gosh, was it the food I ate? Am I getting sick? What's going on? And she drank some water, and she sat up, and she just thought, I gotta just settle down here. And so she did some breathing exercises, and then she went back to sleep, and she seemed to be fine. Wakes up the next morning. It's a nice day, birds are chirping, sees the neighbors, says hi to them, and she just feels a little more hopeful, a little more renewed after getting a few hours of rest. And it's a new day, and she just feels like, I got to get back out, I got to get on the trail, I got to do my thing. And so she packs her day pack, extra water, extra food, takes a down jacket, and even a light rain shell, puts it in the pack, and she's just like ready for anything. And she waves at the neighbors and heads up the Hoh River Trail. And she's determined to find a new space, a new place that she can hang out and just feel comfortable in. The other one had maybe a bear in it, and I don't know, but she's starting to get this feeling that there's just a number of things going on, and she just can't really figure out what it is. She goes up this trail, and she looks down this small ridge, and she can see there's a little bit of a clearing down below. And she thinks, maybe this is it. Maybe this is my new location I can go. She gets on this game trail and she works her way down, and it's much thicker than she imagined. She had seen parts of this park where these trees are just covered in moss, just hanging, dripping moss, and ferns and large trees and plants everywhere and little streams and raining a lot. And this was even beyond that, it seemed like. Just very magical and very mysterious. And she just loved that feeling. It was almost like this cozy feeling of this mysterious ancient place that she could just find that's hers. So she works her way down. She finds this little clearing. It's really amazing. Sits on this log and she's just looking around and thinking about things and kind of breathing a little bit, lightly meditating. And then she's sitting there, and then everything just seemed to like come together. Like the dream she had and the howling and the shapes she saw and the neighbors leaving, all these things just kind of hit her at once. And she just had this, not just uncomfortable feeling or even a feeling of, I got to get out of here, but this feeling of this deep dread. Like something is not just wrong, it's absolutely dangerous. She gets up and she starts almost running back in the direction she came, and she's going up this small ridge trying to get back up the trail, and she goes just a little bit to the right. On the right side of this giant red cedar tree, and she needed to go left to catch the game trail to the main trail. And she goes about 4 or 5 minutes, and she's thinking she's heading towards the trail, and she's heading in the opposite direction. And after 5 minutes, she realizes it, and she stops, and she's on this game trail. And if you know anything about game trails, I used to live in Minnesota, and I grew up near the county park, Hennepin County Parks, and we would go out into the forest. There was no trails back when we were doing this, and we would get on these game trails, and many of them just went to these random locations because they're deer trails, and the deer go to places to bed down for the night, to get out of the wind, go to places protection from predators, go to places to find water and shade. It's just different reasonings for a trail than we have. We have trails that go to lakes, visitor centers, parking lots, mountain peaks, and she's on this game trail, and she realizes this just kind of dead-ended. So she works her way back, comes down to where she thought she was in this clearing, and now the log that she was sitting on had way more moss on it than she remembered, and things just looked different. And she thought, okay, I'm something's not right here, and she tries it again. She goes up this slope and goes in a little bit different direction, and she works her way to the top of the ridge. She can't hear the river, and she goes down this ridge, and she's hoping to hear the river. She doesn't hear it, and she's thinking, well, maybe if I go down and catch a small stream, maybe it'll take me to the river. She goes down, and it's just this tangled mess of brush and tree branches and ferns, and it's just way more than she can deal with. She comes back up to the ridge, works her way down again, and she realizes she's lost. She tries one more time, going up in this opposite direction. She realizes quickly that that's not even right. And so she sits down in this log, pulls out her pack, pulls off her pack, drinks some water, and does some breathing exercises just to kind of center herself. Pulls out the map, she's looking at it, and she's trying to figure out, okay, there's the river, there's the campground, where am I? Checks her phone, she's got a flip phone, this is 2002, no reception where she's at. She starts yelling, doesn't seem to do anything. It's just this vast, thick forest. And then she's thinking, I might have to spend the night out here. I'm lost, and if I keep running around, I'm going to get even more lost. And so she remembered that sometimes it's best to just stay where you're at and just kind of shelter in place, so to speak. She was really happy. She brought her down jacket, so she opens up her pack, pulls a down jacket out, puts that on. She's got some thin gloves she puts on. She remembered reading the weather report. It was going to be mid to high 40s. She wasn't going to freeze to death. She had some extra food and water. And she felt good enough to maybe get through the night. This is not what she wanted to do, and she thought, you know what, I'm going to wake up tomorrow. I'm going to have the same problem tomorrow morning, but at least I'll have the day in front of me and that much more light, because the light was going very fast. And so she just sat there in the forest, and she, next to this very large Sitka spruce, and these trees can be massive, and she's sitting up against this Sitka spruce. It was wet on the ground. She had this little pad she set out from inside of her pack that she could sit on to keep dry, and she thought, okay, I'm warm, I'm dry, and I'm fed, and I'm hydrated, and I'm going to be okay. She's sitting there, and all of a sudden it gets dark, and she can see trees, the outlines of trees around her, and it's just very much almost like black and white. It's just, she can kind of see enough, and there's a 3/4 moon starting to come into play here, and she's sitting there, and then she just, out of exhaustion, falls asleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, she wakes up, and her very first thought was to stand up and stretch and just kind of work her back out and her legs. And then she had this thought, something's wrong. There's some danger. There's something dangerous, and I need to be quiet and still. She remembered that, quiet and still. So she just sat there, being as quiet and still as she could, arms folded, sitting under this giant tree. And then she hears something coming down the trail over her left shoulder, the trees behind her, and off up this trail, this game trail, and coming down. It was working its way down. At first she thought it was an elk. It was so big. She saw this shape in her peripheral vision, and she didn't want to move. She's sitting there, and she's just kind of looking like this, and she sees this large shape coming in next to her. It's down this slope a ways, maybe 20, 25 feet, but she can see it coming, this shape. And this shape continues along, and she can hear it plodding on the trail. And it gets down in front of her, and she's wondering, does it notice me? Does it even know I'm here? And she wasn't sure. And then it stood there, and then it slowly sat down on the trail. And she wasn't sure what it was, and she's looking, and she's waiting, and it just sat there motionless. And she thought, you know, it could be a rock for all she knows if she didn't see it moving. She watched it sitting there until the sun came up. And through the trees, the light was coming through, and she could now start to make out what this was. And this large shape was sitting on this trail, and there's ferns around it, so she could see about 2/3 of it. But she can see it's got these long arms and these big, wide shoulders, and this small head just kind of placed on this shoulders, and is covered in hair. And as the light starts hitting it, she can see the edges of it are this golden brown. And she's watching it for what seemed like the longest time. She's just staring at this thing. And it obviously doesn't know she's there. And then now this feeling of dread and danger kind of lifts. And she's feeling that this thing is very intelligent. And she can see its hand. There's an arm and a hand up like this. And it's holding this very large stick. Very large stick that it's holding, and it's just sitting there like it's waiting for something. And she don't know what to do. And she's thinking, okay, I'm lost. This thing seems really intelligent. I think it's a Bigfoot. And she's feeling kind of courageous now, and she just kind of sits up a little bit and she goes, "Can you help me? I'm lost." And this thing just sat there for 10, 15 seconds, just sat there. And then it just slowly stood up and turned and looked over its shoulder, and rotated around, and it was now staring at her. Up behind it approached two others that looked very similar but smaller. And she said these three beings, these three Bigfoot, were now staring at her, and they all had these very large, round, brown eyes just staring at her, almost like lifeless. They weren't communicating to each other. They were just staring at her, almost like they're frozen. And she felt very uncomfortable, very unsettled, and she didn't know what to do. And then one by one, the two smaller ones just kind of drifted back into the mist and disappeared. And then the big one turned and continued walking down the trail, and it was now dragging this large stick behind it. And then it disappeared into the trees. And she just thought, oh my gosh, that was really odd. That was really strange, surreal. And then she thought she was hallucinating. She thought, is this what hallucinating is? And she didn't know. And she says, okay, well, I don't know, I'm lost. And at least I asked. And about an hour later, she heard voices, people yelling out her name from up above her, somewhere up on the ridge. And she figured, it's got to be the trail. There, people are looking for me. And then she stood up and she yelled out, I'm here, I'm over here. And she did this for a few minutes, and then she finally heard people coming through the forest, and they were yelling her name, and she found help. They came down and found her, the rangers and the search party, and she was so grateful, and they helped her out and got her up out of the brush and up onto the main trail, and they're walking back, and she was so happy that they found her. And turns out the neighbors noticed she had not come back that night and wasn't there the next morning, and they immediately went to the rangers station near the visitor center and told them that she was missing and that she normally went up this trail, and she's got to be up there somewhere. And it turns out the search party and the rangers, they found her tracks and went off the trail, and they followed the tracks to her. She goes back to camp. She thanks her neighbors. She's really grateful that they asked about her and said she was missing and sent the search party. And she spent the night, got up early the next morning, and went to the visitor center to let them know that her campsite was open and that she was leaving. And on her way out, she ran into one of the rangers that was on the search party. And she started talking to him, and they talked to him for quite a while. And the ranger said, you know, you're very lucky. A lot of people that go into this rainforest, if they get lost, sometimes they just simply disappear and vanish. And we're really glad we found you. And she was really happy that they found her. And she was really blown away when she asked, she said, how did you guys find me? And he said, well, we found your trail and we found your tracks, your footprints, but we saw that you'd been dragging this stick. And so we just followed this down, and that was the one thing that we followed to find you. And she wanted to tell him about her experience with the Bigfoot and the little family that she saw. And she just decided not to, but she wished she had, because she realized this ranger probably had his own stories working in Olympic National Park. Now, about 6 months later, she got a new job and she left and went back to Illinois to be closer to family. And then the following summer, her sister and her kids that she liked to hang out with wanted to go back to Washington with her and go to the Olympics and do some hiking and stuff. And she said, well, I'll go hiking, but I will not go alone. And she thought, someday I'm going to tell them why. And that is our story from Anna from Washington, now in Illinois. So, pretty wild story. All right, you guys, that was a long one. Kind of long-winded tonight, so, oh my gosh. But yeah, I'm liking it being in the studio here. I got this chair. I just love this new chair I got a while back, but it's a great story chair. Beats sitting in that little camp chair that's going to flip me over off of a cliff. So, all right, you guys, if you like what I do and like stories about the strange, unexplained, and things that go bump in the forest and at night, like and subscribe. You guys know how to do that. And I really appreciate you guys for watching and being part of this channel. It means a lot to me. And we got a lot of things coming up. We're going to be getting out. And I really want to go to places like the Olympic National Park and do stories from there. That would be so awesome. To be right on location, camping there, having meals, and then doing stories right from the Olympics or Grand Tetons or who knows where else. Just some wild place and have a story right from that location. That'd be awesome. So, all right, you guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. As always, keep hiking.